Hello and welcome to the Frame Technologies podcast. In this episode we're joined by Simon Orrells, the Managing Director of Frame Technologies, as we reflect on 2023 and see what 2024 has in store for self-builders. If you're a self-builder starting a new project, or a self-builder right in the middle of a project, this podcast will provide you with the best tips, hints and tricks for getting the most out of your self-build journey. Frame Technologies Managing Director Simon Orrells has worked in the self-build industry for over 30 years. And now in his position as Managing Director of Frame Technologies, he works day in, day out to help self-builders realise their dream homes in timber frame. Simon, thank you so much for joining us today. The new year is busy for everyone, but particularly so for people in the self-build industry. It's when self-builders start making their plans for the year ahead, because I know that you will be appearing at lots of events up and down the country, as well as supporting people on a daily basis to build their dream self-build home. If there's anyone who can give the best elevator pitch about Frame Technologies, it's you, Simon. So I was wondering if you could introduce yourself and quickly tell us about Frame Technologies.
So, hi, I'm Simon Orrells, Managing Director of Frame Technologies, which delivers timber frame solutions exclusively to the self-build market, with you self-builders delivering your dream.
Now, Simon, you and Frame Technologies had a very busy 2023. What were your highlights?
Some would say it's great to see the end of 2023 and the start of 2024. But when you look back on it, I think it was amazing some of the things that were actually achieved in 2023, because it wasn't an easy market. But for Frame Technologies, we still saw good market share. We saw us deliver our largest Class Q project to date with a client called Lucy and Murray Humphreys down on the South Coast. And they were great clients, but they were also one of the typical clients that, when are you going to be moving in? We're going to be moving. I've promised we'll be in by Christmas. I doubted they would ever do that. And lo and behold, they did move in before Christmas. But he did promise the family he would cook Christmas dinner in the new house, obviously at Christmas Day, and they did. I think since COVID and obviously material increases and costs rising, you've seen a different style with self-build becoming more hands-on, and clients actually being very hands-on to keep costs down and to keep better control of the projects, really, like that. And obviously we were working hard with the National Self-Build and Renovation Centre and Build It Live, meeting some great projects, because obviously we don't do as many exhibitions now, but because we're supporting those two very well, it's amazing the amount of projects we see and the amount of clients we see. You see a lot of clients 3 or 4 times before the project actually comes to fruition. Obviously then coming towards the end of 2023, saw us in London again for the Build It Awards. But again, as I was saying earlier about hands-on projects, this saw us going to London this time with a project for Steve and Susanna Richardson. The whole key and the whole understanding of their project was hands-on. Susanna and her brother John had been very, very hands-on with that. And Susanna said all the way through that she wanted to turn around and actually do everything with it. So I think going to having that one shortlisted for Best Timber Frame and Best Self-Build, and to walk away with Susanna and Steve with Best Self-Build in 2023, I think underpins what Frame Technologies is all about. And that sort of underpinned it completely, really. Straight off the back of the awards in London, we did the Class Q webinar. That worked very well. Just shows how we're changing tack since COVID with communicating with everybody. And that showed how you can get over 200 people on a Thursday evening online going through and actually debating. We had 4 good speakers. Pre-COVID, we would have never entertained doing that. And so I think that just shows how Frame Technologies has moved with the times and actually with clients, because self-builders have got daytime jobs as well, a lot of them. So their time is precious and they haven't always got time to go to exhibitions. So starting with the webinars like that, that's been really good, working with the National Self-Build and Renovation Centre. And we shall see some of those projects coming through. I think one of the other successes really of 2023 saw how well our e-shots were getting received, and some people got to the point where they found it very informative and were actually waiting to see what we were sending, which was actually brilliant. And I thank them all for that. We were trying to make sure our e-shots had sort of industry information, project information, and useful tips, which people found very, very informative. And then obviously where we are now with launching of the podcasts. But again, it's another different medium to turn and talk to people, and people can listen to it as and when they want. We've got to, and I think we have done, we've unlocked more ways of communicating with people in their busy lives. I think 2023 has been quite interesting. I think it's one of those where we've, as you said, had a lot of success in there. It has been a hard year. I think hopefully some of those things will move forward in 2024.
We know that there will be a lot of listeners listening to this podcast who are considering a self-build journey and maybe setting out on a journey to self-build their new dream home in 2024. What advice would you give those self-builder listeners about building this year?
Changes to regulations, we're only starting to see that coming through now. In the self-build market, it's very different compared to mainstream market. And I was at an event end of last year with seeing how industry is trying to future-proof regulation with different fabric performances and different things. But whereas mainstream, they're only wanting to achieve regulation, with self-build, we want to exceed regulation. And I think it's one of those where it always annoyed me how people in mainstream can sort of build a house and somebody could move into it years down the road. As long as they're still the first person moving into that house, it's a new house, and it might not comply with the regulations the day they move in, which is just totally absurd. Whereas with self-builders, they want to be so far in front of regulation. And I think coming into 24 now, we're going to see a lot more projects running with the new Part L, and also people trying to get out their heads around the new SI values and the new Part O assessments, because we're finding quite a few projects coming through now where they're failing on the overheating, because they're really needing to do the Part O assessment as they get planning or pre-planning to make sure, because it's part of the design. And so we've had a few projects now where we've had to alter the design to get it to comply. So I think that's going to be quite interesting. And the SI values as well, there's still people using the old style and fudging the SAP calc. Well, a lot of self-builders, they want it to do what it says on the tin. And I think the one thing you've got to make sure is when you're looking at your build system going forward, has it got current SI values? If not, it don't matter how cheap it is, because at the end of the day, it's not going to deliver what you want further down the road. And because we've believed in that so much now, we've actually invested in our own software and our own guys trained up to do that. Now more than ever, and with the current weather, people are wanting to build quickly. So obviously getting timber frame going to site and being up within a week or 10 days. Always remember a project we did last year for an architect building his retirement home. Never did built timber frame before, and the frame was up. It was only a bungalow, admittedly, but it was a 3-4 bedroom bungalow, and it was up and in the dry in 6 days. And he was just like, why have I not been building this for years?
Cost, as you know, is a huge issue for self-builders, and sticking within a budget is the best way to complete your project promptly. Could you tell us a little bit more about your forecast for costs in 2024?
Cost is king. Cost is really king. Materials are starting to level themselves out a bit, so I think that's going to help. But we're still seeing too many projects where at design stage, people are not understanding budget cost of the project at design stage, and are over designing too big and designing too complicated. I've got one project at the moment we're looking at now. It's been back into planning 3 or 4 times, trying to save cost. And there comes a point where you've just got to be harder. So I think, again, as we always say, get us involved as early as you can to look at that design and actually help steer it pre-planning, because at the end of the day, the more simplistic we can keep it, the better we can control cost like that. So I think that would be one of my biggest nuggets for 2024, because I can see cost is still going to be quite a key item.
There honestly isn't anyone more qualified to give us a very accurate prediction for 2024. And I was wondering if you could share some of that industry insight and let us know what self-builders can expect throughout the coming year?
The biggest prediction, which if you'd have asked me 20 years ago, I'd have never, ever dreamed of. We've actually got timber frame systems and SIP systems now further increasing market share. When you saw timber frame systems at single figure percentages 20 years ago, we never dreamed we would see it stealing market share. Last quarter of 23, we saw timber systems taking overall market share. That is just going to increase in 2024. And that just goes to show it does what it says on the tin. It's delivering a very sustainable, environmental, off-site produced product, and that is just going to climb and climb and climb. And as I've always said to people, it's a complete build solution as well, which when you're looking at trying to control cost, that is a key item like that. And also, I think you're going to see self-build's going to climb. Self-build's the smallest percentage in the UK of any other country in the world, which is crazy. We're still getting monopolised by the mainstream. But I think you're going to see a lot more self-build climbing now because people want to control the quality of the house they live in. They want to control what it's built out of, and they want to control the running costs. And at the end of the day now, they're not necessarily wanting to make money out of it. What they're wanting to do is achieve value. So at the end of the day, if they've got £500,000 to spend on a house and it costs them £500,000 to build, they're quite happy because they know what they've got is value then. Whereas your builders and that are trying to make a margin out of it. That I think is going to see us see a lot more self-build. You're going to see a lot more extensions and renovations, but I think new build's going to climb because at the end of the day, with the cost of labour, cost of materials, it's more cost certainty to build it new than it is to turn around and repair it these days.
Simon, insulation is going to be a really hot topic for 2024, and I'd like to take us back and reflect on the Cedar House. The Cedar House, as we mentioned earlier in your highlights of 2023, won Best Self-Build Project in the UK at the 2023 Builder Awards. There's lots of great things about that property, but one aspect I really like is the fact that it uses wool insulation. This wool insulation is really thick, 300 millimeters deep, but it plays multiple roles in the makeup of the home. So not only is it insulating the home, and because it's so great at insulating, it is reducing the lifetime costs of running the home. It lowered the carbon footprint of the build process. But on top of that, it sequesters carbon from the atmosphere. So we describe that home as breathing in harmony with the environment because it actually does. Are we going to see self-builders also thinking more strategically about sustainable or renewable insulation?
We've seen it happen over the last 15, 18 months, but in the latter parts of 23, we've seen that start to move. PIR's starting to fall out of favour, and you're going to start to see more natural. But the only thing I keep saying to people is make sure we use natural insulations, not novelty insulations. There are a lot of natural novelty solutions out there which are expensive. And what I mean by that is not mainstream. We've got a lot of natural insulations that have been around a long time, that are in the merchants, on the suppliers have got it on the ground. If you start using products that are new to the market with unsecure supply chains, then that's going to get expensive, and we need to watch that. So I think that I think is going to be the biggest one moving, which then we've got to watch obviously overall wall thicknesses, because natural insulations need thicker walls to achieve these ultimate U values. But yeah, I think that's most probably going to be the big one for 2024.
Simon, thank you so much for finding time in your very busy schedule to join us for this podcast, and thank you so much for sharing your industry insight. Before we say goodbye, I'd like to give you the last word. This is the question that all self-builders ask, and I know a lot of self-builders ask you this when they meet you at the NSBRC shows, at the Build It Live shows. So now that we've got a captive audience of many listeners, I'm going to ask it again. What's your biggest self-build tip, hint, trick, piece of advice, little nugget that is going to really turbocharge a self-build journey and get self-builders closer to building the house of their dreams?
Get us involved as early as you possibly can. Do your research, because at the end of the day, it's the biggest spend you're ever going to make. It's the biggest financial commitment you're ever going to make. Be open and be firm with your budget. from the start and be flexible on your program. And people say, well, what do you mean be flexible on your program? One of the worst things that we've seen over the last few years now with TV and so much building on TV is how fast it can be built, how quick it can be built, and everybody wants to be in by Christmas. No matter if they don't start till November, they still want to be in by Christmas. And it's that sort of one thing that never sort of moves. One thing we've seen since COVID, which is quite partly unusual, but there is an element where speed costs you money. When trades are put at pressure to getting jobs done and getting jobs in and out, if you can be a little bit more flexible with your trades on program, you'll get better prices, better quality, which will actually help drive down cost overall. That has been sort of value engineering, I think, is one of the best cost savings going forward, that people have got too hung up on got to be finished, crash, bang, wallop, got to be finished. They just don't realise how much that's actually costing them in the overall journey. So I would say that's another good one to take away. As we've said, do your research, get out to the National Self-Build Renovation Centre, go to the Build It Live exhibitions, make sure you're signed up for the Build It magazines coming out, because obviously we do a lot of content in there as well. It's one of those, you've just got to do your research going forward into there for 2024, because things are changing, things are moving forward. You've got to do your research to keep seeing what's new out there, what's the latest information out there and latest products, because I think it isn't going to be a volume thing now. It's all about quality rather than quantity, and so you are going to see I think you're going to see more new products coming in and new ways of doing things.
Simon is expecting to see timber frame take a bigger share of the market. It's already growing, but there's room still to grow more. On top of that, he's expecting to see self-builders become even more hands-on, leading lots of different aspects of their project. He wants you all to remember that cost is king, and if you can, involve Frame Technologies as soon as possible. If you'd like to know more about building with timber frame, you can head to the Frame Technologies website. That's www.frametechnologies.co.uk. On the website, you can find out more about Frame Technologies, what they do, and their 3 technology options from the TechVantage series. If you've already decided you want to build in timber frame, getting a quote from Frame Technologies could not be easier. Depending on how far you have progressed, there are 2 different types of quotation that Frame Technologies can provide to give you an idea of your self-build cost. If you're in the early stages of your project and you've not yet decided on budgets and building solutions, Frame Technologies can advise you accordingly based on pre-planning drawings alone. This is not a final quotation, but the expert team can provide an indication of the costs for your build. If you have progressed further through the build process, Frame Technologies can provide a quotation based on approved planning drawings, proposed U values, air tightness targets, timescales, site conditions, and access. To begin the quotation process, simply send your drawings and supporting information by email. Frame Technologies accepts drawings in both DWG and PDF formats, and the email address is enquiries@frametechnologies.co.uk. We look forward to hearing from you soon.